joined us to kindly move in front. Now, yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, we had the inaugural session wherein we had our honorable ministers, our honorable Minister of New and Renewable Energy, Shri Prahlad Venkatej Joshi ji, inaugurated the exhibition as well as the conference. We also had our honorable Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri ji. This second edition is being organized by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy along with the Office of the Principal Advisor to the Government of India. We also had Professor Ajay K. Sood, who is the Principal Advisor to the Government of India. And the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas is supporting us. We had our Honorable Minister, PNG, and our Secretary, MNRE, along with once again the support we have got from the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research. We had the Secretary, DSIR, also in the inaugural session. Post that, we had our plenary session. In these 3 days, we are of course, presenting the breakthroughs which India has been able to make since the time we launched our green hydrogen mission. The mission was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister in January 2023, to be precise, on the 4th of January. And post that, we had our first conference on green hydrogen, the international conference. It was held in July 2023. Following that, we now have the second one. So between that time of the first and the second, the inroads which we have been able to make, the breakthroughs that was shared in the India Perspective plenary session by our respected Secretary, sir. And post that, we also invited the perspective of US. And US, in fact, they are our country partners. We also have a special session with them on the India-US collaboration and partnership. And today we are going to be, in our plenary sessions, inviting the perspective of Australia and Netherlands and the EU perspective. We also have, and these sessions we are going to be going just back to back as we start at 9:30, taking these 3 plenary sessions back to back. And after that, we have the green hydrogen for youth. That's again a session which is going to be taking place in this very hall. There's also the hackathon which is going to be happening. I mentioned about the hackathon, which is, again, that's a competition which has been organized towards inviting the young minds, the bright ideas of the youth, the startups, the entrepreneurs, towards that, the competition hackathon. And that's going to be taking place in the meeting room 6, that's on level 1. The poster session, we received almost 100 abstracts towards the posters. Again, today we have the poster session. They are going to be, the finalists are going to be making their presentations, and the first, second, and the third positions are going to be today selected in the posters. The poster session happens in the exhibition hall. That's in hall number 14. Apart from that, we have the country roundtables that stands open only by invite, and also the India-US Hydrogen Task Force and the Industry Roundtable. That's also going to be happening today. But all these, the country roundtables are strictly by invite. So the key attractions of today are the 3 plenary sessions. Our youth session, which is going to be taking place in this very hall. The youth session is towards creating greater awareness among the youth about going green, about green economy, about green hydrogen, renewables, and then inviting their bright ideas and their views and perspective on environment conservation, on ecology and environment going hand in hand, their innovative concept, their perspective. We are also going to be having some celebrities joining us, some environmental activists who have been very active in this field. They are also going to be talking and addressing our youth, and so it's going to be more of a engagement with the youth. That's green hydrogen for youth happening in this very hall after our plenary sessions. By 12:30, we are going to be starting with that session also. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, apart from our plenary sessions which we have in the morning, we are going to be having our closing session, the valedictory session, and therein we are going to be once again joined by our respective secretaries of MNRE along with the Secretary DSIR. But then we have our senior leadership of our country, the Honorable Minister of State with independent charge of Science and Technology, Dr. Jitendra Singh, joining us in the valedictory session tomorrow, along with our Honorable Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy, Shri Shripad Yesunaikji. That's going to be the closing for tomorrow. As I mentioned to you yesterday, we are also having Reinvest India. This is towards inviting, we have the global investors joining us in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. That's on the 16th to the 18th of September. And that's going to be, we have in the inaugural session, our Honorable Prime Minister addressing the investors there. So India has been making great strides as we stand committed towards this green journey of ours, towards the targets which we have set for ourselves of 2030, and then that of 2047 when we celebrate our 100 years of our independence, working towards becoming a Viksit Bharat. But then the journey towards becoming Viksit Bharat stands extremely committed and dedicated towards this greener growth, across sectors, exploring newer sources of energy, greener sources of energy. We had our Honorable Minister of PNG, Petroleum and Natural Gas, Shri Hardeep Singh Puriji, yesterday. He spoke to us, he shared with us the approach which his ministry is taking towards integrating green hydrogen and other renewable sources of energy in the oil refineries, in the city gas distribution, and working again with the larger vision of our Honorable Prime Minister towards shaping a more clean, green, self-reliant, inclusive, Atmanirbhar growth for India. And we'll have our Secretary PNG also joining us as a chair of the session, the second plenary session, wherein we bring you the Australian perspective. As was mentioned by our Secretary Sir also yesterday, since when we had the first international conference on green hydrogen last year, we had almost 3,000 plus attendees, delegates. And this time it has not only doubled but exceeded that also, almost 7,000 plus delegates who are attending this 3-day conference. Almost 120 plus exhibitors who are showcasing their state-of-the-art technologies, innovations, solutions, and the work in the space of green hydrogen and renewables. That's the exhibition which is being organized in hall number 14. Today, ladies and gentlemen, as you might be aware, there is another conference which is happening, the aviation conference, where the Honorable Prime Minister is going to be attending that. Though he's going to be coming here at 4 o'clock for that conference, but then there are some security advisory which has been extended by his security, by SPG. So just requesting you all to kindly follow those as you move out for lunch and then for the other sessions. Kindly, their signages, level 2 is where Honorable Prime Minister Sir is going to be coming today. So that's the restricted area. you requested not to be moving to the level 2. Otherwise, also we have our sessions at this level, and then we are there on level 1. So we are just requesting everyone not to be moving to level 2, for Honorable Prime Minister is going to be gracing another conference in this very premises. We also intend to start on time, and again, it is because of the advisory from Prime Minister's office. We are going to be closing here in this very hall after the youth session till lunch, and then moving to the next level. That's level 1, where we have the other sessions which are going to be taking place. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to all of you once again to the day 2 of the International Conference on Green Hydrogen. And as we begin with our plenary session 3, that's the EU perspective we share with you. We have the Honorable Chair of the session, Shri Pankaj Agarwal, respected Secretary, Ministry of Power. Mr. Agarwal belongs to the Indian Administrative Service of 92 batch and has wide experience in the area of health, industry, infrastructure and finance in a career spanning more than 29 years. We are delighted to have the presence of our speaker, eminent speaker, Mr. Jorgo Chatzimarkakis, the Chief Executive Officer, Hydrogen Europe. Mr. Jorgo has been Secretary General of the Hydrogen Europe since 2016. Before, he was representative of Infineon Technologies in Brussels and member of the European Parliament, inter alia in the ITRA Committee, Industry, Technology, Research and Energy, where he could contribute to lay the cornerstone for the first and the second joint undertaking on hydrogen and fuel cells. As I welcome our chair and our eminent speaker, I now request our Honourable Chair for his opening remarks, and then we further share the EU perspective with all of you. Kindly be taking your seats at the earliest possible, please. Thank you.
Good morning. Let me start with welcoming Mr. Jorgo Chatzimarkakis, who is a very, very active industry leader in the European Union and has been a friend of India in our journey to develop the green hydrogen ecosystem. Today we have the colleagues from the industry, colleagues from the ministries, the Government of India, other stakeholders, the developers, and a whole galaxy of participants who are interested in India's green hydrogen story. Honorable Prime Minister, in his opening remarks, has already expressed that India desires to become a global hub for production, consumption, and also export of hydrogen. With that spirit, a national green hydrogen mission was launched with a provision of about $2.5 billion. The idea is to develop the supply chain, to develop the standards and regulations, the use cases, and also the port infrastructure to facilitate the exports. So let me clarify at the outset that our focus in terms of green hydrogen is to produce both for the requirements of our own domestic industry, and we are also looking for the export opportunities. European Union happens to be the leader in the field of green hydrogen, besides the countries like Japan, USA, Singapore, Korea, and many other countries. Since EU happens to be a big potential partner in our hydrogen plants, it will be appropriate to have proper understanding of what is happening in Europe, particularly in terms of the regulations which are in the evolutionary stage. There are few concerns which have been expressed by our industry in the recent past, particularly related to the delegated legislation following the RED2. The issue of additionality, probably that is more or less accepted, but the issue of geographic and temporal correlation is something which has been bothering the industry in India. There has also been an issue of single bidding zone, and that is one issue which our industry has been regularly flagging before us, and how exactly we can address it. Though we have given adequate explanation to the delegation which had come from the European Commission sometime, I think a month back, and we have been looking forward to further interaction with the officials, the Director General, and the team from the European Commission for further clarification in case any is required. So without much ado, I think we would all like to listen to Mr. Jorgo, and the floor is open to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for the invitation, but also thanks for being the global new hub for hydrogen. This is not an easy thing, and I represent here a European association that is an industry association, but it is an official partnership with the European Commission with regards to research innovation. And we also have in our partnership, in our membership, regions, European regions, and national associations, which is very, very important. I will address, Mr. Secretary, the points that you mentioned in my speech, but I would like also to dwell on some global aspects and why this partnership of India, especially with Europe, is so important. So first of all, hydrogen allows to internalize the costs that your Prime Minister mentioned in his address very clearly, and that he addressed also during the G20 summit here. Internalize external costs that the CO2 emissions cause. If we see here on the globe, we see the centers of CO2 emission, and they are still not stopping. We still didn't have the peak, so to say, the carbon peak. Every year we postpone. Every COP we say next year we will be there. We have, as a measure against that, the ETS, the emission trading system, to give a CO2 pricing mechanism to that. You can see there which countries are there. You can see that the EU is a quite relevant factor in doing that, and I'm mentioning it because we are in front of a reform. We have a new European Commission for the next 5 years, and the ETS system of on European side will be reformed. But you also can see that biggest part of the world is not participating in ETS. It is relevant for the hydrogen price and relevant for hydrogen to be scaled up as a factor, that we are treated with the real costs. At the moment, fossil industries, and they are also in our membership, are very, very much subsidized all over the globe with trillions. The hydrogen industry needs to fight for this. Would you have a fair ETS price, this would go down naturally. But here you see that China, for instance, is the biggest partner in ETS. However, look at the price. You can see on that curve down there, the Chinese price is the Chinese ETS price is that black curve over there. It's very, very low. So it doesn't really help. What I want to say is, if you really want to have hydrogen as a fair competitor to fossil energies, we need to go for a fair hydrogen price. And then hydrogen can do two things. It can help to decarbonize molecules. We can decarbonize molecules by several technologies, and that's the other colors of hydrogen that I will mention in a moment. And we can reduce CO2 emissions by that. That's one part of the job that needs to be done to fight global warming. The other job is to have more renewables in the system. So these are the two elements that we need to bring forward, and hydrogen can help both. Hydrogen is an enabler to decarbonize molecules and to help renewable energies, because renewable energies face, not in India because you have a very, very strong power grid. Congratulations for that, to that. Other countries have limitations. I also come back to that. And these are the two key elements to become net zero, and hydrogen is therefore the best investment into that new world. Now let me talk about colors. We have heard from many speakers yesterday that you concentrate on green hydrogen, but in fact you would also look into other colors. Ladies and gentlemen, the end of the rainbow has come. What I want to say is we shouldn't discuss colors. We should discuss carbon content. Carbon content means that there are different ways of accounting that. That's why pricing of carbon via ETS is so important. But in the end, green will be the best, and in the Indian case, it might be also in the long run the cheapest way to produce hydrogen. But there are other ways also, and that's why we need to discuss time to decarbonization. You know, time to market, this concept. The faster you bring a product to the market, time to market is so important. In our case, we need to talk about time to decarbonization. If other technologies or a set of technologies help to decarbonize faster, that's what we want to do, and that's why we favor technology diversity, which is absolutely important. Now, what is Europe's role? Europe has put some targets on certain fields and is a very, very important market. Basically, the biggest hydrogen market in the world. As India develops to a hydrogen hub, it will consume hydrogen, but it will also produce, and we need Indian hydrogen in Europe because we cannot produce as much as you could do. That's where the 10 million tons of European production, but 10 million tons of imports come from. So we never made, as Europeans, a secret out of it. We will be a net importer. How does it translate into concrete targets? What you see here is the achievements of the last 5 years. The last 5 years, the European Union has put forward something which is called the European Green Deal. Fit for 55 was, so to say, the legislative name for it. 3,000 pages of law, 3,000 pages, 1,000 mentionings of hydrogen. So you can already see that the role of hydrogen in that is very, very big. And it translates into 600 refueling stations that we will build obligatory. So member states are obliged to do it until 2030, all over the continent. It might not sound very much, but it is enough fueling stations to fuel heavy duty. So for trucks that need to go along the central axis in Europe, this is enough. And this is to ramp up also the hydrogen in mobility. We don't concentrate on passenger cars, we concentrate on heavy duty. Passenger cars will come as a natural, logical consequence once the fueling stations are there. I myself, I'm driving now the 5th year a hydrogen car, and I benefit, of course, from the existing hydrogen refueling stations. It's a mature, it's a good technology, but this law obliges member states to get there. Then we have obligations of the member states of Europe to put hydrogen into mobility. All in all, it's 2.5 million tons annually. We have obligations to use hydrogen in the industry, in chemical industry, in the fertilizer industry, steel industry, and also petrochemical industry. This sums up to 3 million tons that we need per year. And then we started to have hydrogen targets in aviation and in maritime. This is 500,000 tons per year. As of 2030, this is the market that is the minimum. There will be much more, but this is the minimum, this is the obligation, and this is interesting for you. So the role of Europe so far is to help to de-risk the off-takers. Our problem is that the off-takers need a de-risking facility. We have quite a toolbox of instruments that help, that support hydrogen offtake, but it's chaotic at the moment. It's chaotic and it's not very clear. That's why we started to create the so-called hydrogen bank. The hydrogen bank wants to basically put a little bit of order into this funding mechanism, and the second tender is about to be prepared. First tender was 800 million, was quite fast compared to some national tenders, much faster, and it gave us a price, some price mechanisms already. The second tender is under development with the sensitivity of local content, yes or not? Because I'm very honest to you, the first tender led to a situation whereby 70% of the projects would use Chinese electrolyzers. And that's a question, do we want this or do we not want this? And I can clearly say my industry association does not want this. We want, of course, electrolyzers from all over the globe to be there and not dominantly again from China. We have already in Europe a dependency on photovoltaic, on solar panels of 92%. It's not acceptable. And this needs to be reduced. We can learn here from India. But this is something we are preparing right now. Now this here is extremely important to understand where the bottleneck at the moment is for the markets. If you are ammonia buyer in Europe and you want to buy ammonia from India, green ammonia from India, this is roughly the price that you would pay. So normally you pay, ammonia is built with natural gas. Yeah? Normally you would pay 1.5 euro in our case. You would be happy to pay a premium of €0.5. So if it's 2 euro, you would do it. You are BASF, you are the biggest chemical company in the world, you would pay 2. But the price for green ammonia goes up to 6, even more so at the moment. Who is giving you the 4 euro that you need? And here's where I would like to discuss with you. This is very, very important. We now need to concentrate on simple and non-complex funding mechanisms for off-takers. We call it contract for difference. So we are working together with member states, but also with the Commission to understand that 2 euros would come from that instrument for off-takers, 2 euros. The other 2 euros, and here we need to start to discuss, might come from producers. So a producer in India might say, if I have an off-taker who signs for 20 years, I can afford to bring down the price. And these 20 years never will be on paper if we don't have this mechanism work. And this is, at the moment, the point of discussion. If the state, if the governments in Europe share the risk by giving this 2 euro, the deal will be done. I'm absolutely sure. But we also need the help of you, the industry in India, the government in India, to support this idea. Because that's the bottleneck for overcoming chicken and egg dilemma. We have at the moment the chicken and egg dilemma. But once this is done, it will work. I have one secret for you, which we prepare right now, which is the reform of the agricultural markets in Europe. Agriculture being the biggest budget that we have in Europe, by far the biggest, nearly 40%, so lots of money in that budget. But ETS that I mentioned in the beginning has no relevance for the agricultural business. This will be changed right now. Imagine if farmers, if the agricultural sector also has to reduce emissions, and this will be the case, and we start with upstream emissions and fund fertilizers, this could be the 2 euro that will be there from the agricultural side. And here you see that we are discussing big volumes and it's very timely. Now, Secretary, you mentioned some elements that are like a straitjacket hampering the production or even the idea of coming to business, and that's the hourly correlation that you mentioned. So basically, for all of you who don't know what it is, hydrogen is only defined green in Europe if the electricity that you need for the electrolyzer is produced in the same hour. So electricity from renewables in the same hour as the electrolyzer splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. Ladies and gentlemen, this might sound very, very sustainable. It's not. It's an artificial element that has been put by people who are a little bit reluctant towards hydrogen, artificial to bring the price up. It's not relevant. The same applies to the bidding zones. Europe has a very complicated system of bidding zones and says only if the electrolyzer is in the same bidding zone as the electricity production, only then it's regarded green. And the same rules apply for imports, so for India. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, what we need to stop. This straitjacket hampers hydrogen production in Europe. It hampers hydrogen production in India as a very, very important production country for Europe. And if I have one big wish to Mrs. von der Leyen, because she said, my first 100 days of my office, I devote to unnecessary bureaucratic burden to clean tech. This is the priority. And it would be good, Mr. Secretary, if your government humbly hints that also for India this is not a good case. She will understand and she will rectify that because a new office, a new term allows all that. Let's get rid of the straitjacket. There's another thing which is very important. It's funding and financing. Mr. Draghi, the former president of the European Central Bank and the former prime minister of Italy, was asked by Mrs. von der Leyen to come up with a report on competitiveness. And he said the following: Europe needs 800 billion per year, 800 billion euros per year to be competitive in clean tech. Maybe he shouldn't have said that. It's the truth. But many people say, oh, that's too much. We need to crowd in private money into public funding. We don't have enough public funds for that. And in order to get there, you need, so to say, a system of green bonds. How do you visualize green bonds? Like that. So green bonds will be the possibility to do the following. I have a very simple idea because I know that G20 in this building was very important. You remember that G20 just had a meeting in Rio where they discussed the billionaires tax. The billionaires tax was not discussed until the end, but if we have mechanisms that allow a private investor to invest into infrastructure, for instance in ports for ammonia, for instance in pipelines, then he should be deducted from that billionaires tax scheme. But that could be a G20 initiative. We do it together. We need together this investments, also private investments into infrastructure. But we want to pave the way to make this a safe investment. And this is where the green bond system that we are preparing there in Europe will help, I'm absolutely sure. But we need the contribution, and I know the commitment of your Prime Minister, of your government to this G20 process and development, and this is super important. Now, let me come to one very, very important point, which is the relation between renewable energy, electricity, and hydrogen. You don't face these problems as you have a strong and a unique, a single power grid. And I'm very fascinated to see that 40% of your power production are already based on renewables, and you don't have curtailment and grid congestion. That's the problem we have in Europe. We have a lot of grid congestion, and I'm mentioning that because you might come across this either renewables and electricity or hydrogen. It's both. Both belongs together. Here's an example of Germany, the country that started very, very early to invest into renewables. They also reached 40% of renewables in the power system last year. But the cost of grid congestion, because the grid is not big enough, have been last year 11 billion euro. grid congestion and curtailment. So you produce and you curtail. And this is not good. You could use that curtailed energy at the very moment to produce hydrogen. You could use the hydrogen to balance out what is not there in the night. At the moment they do it with coal because they abandoned nuclear. That's a German specificity. Let me talk figures. If you would ramp up the power grid like you have it in India, in Germany, to make it fit for 100% renewables, the costs are not like here 230 billion, it's 320 billion. 320 billion, said the minister 2 weeks ago. The cost into the hydrogen grid, and you might consider to think about hydrogen pipelines also, is 20 billion to transport the same energy in molecules. That's the difference between power, investment in power grids and investment in hydrogen, because it's a gas grids. 320 versus 20 billion, you can see how big that difference is. And that's why we would say the electricity guys should not kill the hydrogen guys. They try sometimes to say we are superior, we are more energy efficient. That might be the case. But if I have a high energy efficiency, but the grid is too expensive because it's many, many times more expensive, this is not cost efficient. It needs to be an analysis between cost efficiency and system efficiency, because hydrogen contributes to a system that is much more suited to anything else. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not only an industry association, we are together with the European Commission also organizing one of the most important, in the meanwhile, gatherings of hydrogen in the world. That's the European Hydrogen Week that normally takes place in November. And I think we will talk about that in the end of that talk and that discussion. But Secretary, you asked me also to open the floor for question, and we will do a special announcement on that Hydrogen Week later on. But maybe we have some questions right now and after my talk. Thank you very much.
So may I invite the audience to put their questions? Yeah, please.
Good morning, sir. Yes, sir. This side. Yeah, good morning, sir. It was an excellent presentation regarding the economics of hydrogen from India to Europe. One question arises, sir, is you have taken consideration for exchange rate between euro and rupee? And if it is favorable, then it will become more favorable for India to export. What is your opinion in this regarding the exchange rate? Because it is always fluctuating.
That's an excellent question. Currency, which currency to use? So I can quote the European Hydrogen Strategy from 2020, by the way, and we are in the 4th year after the hydrogen strategy. There, the European Commission asks for euro as the currency to be the denominator of hydrogen business. Not the case yet. But you can imagine that the question whether it's rupee or whether it's renminbi, yuan, or whether it's dollar or whether it's euro might become very relevant. So if I see the dynamics of India, rupee might qualify. Yeah, it's indeed what I have seen the last 2 years. I have been here 2 years before when previous minister made a clear analysis of the European hydrogen market in front of us and was better informed than many Europeans. If I see the jump that the Indian hydrogen economy has taken since that, the leapfrog, I don't exclude that it will be rupee, but I cannot guarantee. So it's a competition for the right denominator currency, and you are totally right with your question. It might encourage your government to look into that question, and I would say why not? But it should be one, and possibly not the dollar, because the dollar has enough elements to carry. So let's talk about this between euro and rupee. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Jorgo, and it's always a pleasure to hear from you. So I'm Deepak Agarwal from Avada Group, And as you know, we are one of the leading developers for green hydrogen and green molecules in India. So two specific questions. One, I really appreciate that you have highlighted and your policy support to continuously push India as a one single grid. And just recently, even Government of India has also issued a notification that entire India should be considered as one single grid. But yes, we have to continuously do that policy advocacy to consider India as a one single bidding zone as far as the bidding in Europe is concerned. So that is very important breakthrough that we are expecting from the new EU Commissioner. And the second point, which we are still struggling is to how is the development of a cracking infrastructure happening at various ports in India, in Europe. Like we understand Rotterdam is leading, but what about other ports? Because Europe is entirely talking in green hydrogen, but ultimately, as you know, it will be most possibilities, the ammonia will be an energy carrier for hydrogen. And the substantial investments are also needed in the importing port for cracking the ammonia back to hydrogen and the conversion loss that happens over there, and then subsequently transport hydrogen. So any thoughts on that? That would really help.
I start with the latter, with the ammonia cracking, and indeed, ammonia, which is a commodity already, and it exists, so it is an interesting derivative of hydrogen to carry hydrogen, or even to be a bigger commodity in the future. But if you want to turn it then back to hydrogen, you need the crackers. Indeed, crackers become a new, how to say, hot product. And we are preparing at the moment floating crackers, because the ammonia demand and the cracking demand is so big that fixed installations are interesting but not needed. It's much cheaper to learn from the LNG market, where you have this FSRUs, the floating elements, and exactly the same industries are cooperating with us now to introduce within the next 2 years floating crackers, which give you much more flexibility and which also could stay where they are for a long time, so you don't need to have a fixed installation onshore, but they could also move. So this is something, and if you're interested, we talk bilaterally about the concrete company. I would also like to say, and that goes to the first question, I really enjoy and like the way the Indian business is pragmatically dealing with these questions that you just mentioned, the single, so the bidding zone and so on and so forth, because you don't have ideology here. You go pragmatically to these markets. In Europe, we suffer a little bit from that. That's why I showed the electricity guys giving themselves a green image. The hydrogen guys being a little bit the molecule guys, and they cannot be green. This is not okay. This is from yesterday. We need to work together. And you see what happens at the moment at the battery car markets. It goes down. It goes down. Of course, we were saying that before. I'm not happy about that. But it is something that shows that there are limits to one technology only. And this is why the idea of stopping that ideological bureaucratic burden and hurdles is something that is in the mind of Mrs. von der Leyen herself. I'm focusing on her because she is really very, very addicted to hydrogen, and can I say also very, very interested into India. And both helps very much to unblock this one question, which is so important for you. It's also important for us. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, good morning. If I may ask?
Where?
From here, from center. Yeah, can you see street? Hi, Jorgo.
Yeah. Yes, there's the light. Now I see.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rohish Kalvit, and working with H2E Power Solutions. I have typically a question because the EU perspective and the scope for India and the joint venture looks quite promising. Now, the question arises of the standards in terms of manufacturing, the standards in terms of safety, and the skilling sets. So EU does not just want maybe ammonia or hydrogen, but they also want the standard to be practiced here in India so that the products or the skills can be accepted there. How to address this particular situation so that the green hydrogen story can be successful?
This is a super relevant question because standards are often underestimated. In the field of hydrogen, we have already many standards. So in mobility, standards for the refueling, standards for the cars, of course. In electrolytes, we start to have standards. Can I say that India is quite advanced in standards? I was yesterday part of one workshop, and I have to say I was also astonished. I got a report with the amount of standards that have been developed in the hydrogen sector here in India. However, we need an international understanding and a national recognition, mutual recognition of these standards. This process happens at the moment in an international forum that has been built. It has been basically officialized during the last COP in Dubai. It's called the International Trade Forum on Hydrogen, and it is led at the moment by the Netherlands and by the Emirates. I think Netherlands will keep and Brazil will take over, and India is part of it, and India should bring in this new, fresh power on hydrogen and also the knowledge and the standards. You need to bring the standards there and say, could you others please accept these standards that we propose here? It's a question of very friendly negotiations, and this is why I can say the forum exists. India should just self-confidently walk in and present the standards that have been developed here. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
We can take one
Hi.
more question.
Yeah, yes.
Hi.
Yes,
Just one question.
yes, sir. Here, center. Yeah, thank you, sir. There is two things you discussed regarding the energy source, that is hydrogen and electricity. Under your organization, there are various research institutes working there in the entire Europe. Is there any other alternatives at present it is considered and researched in your organization somewhere? Thank you.
You mentioned Horizon Europe. Yeah? Horizon Europe is the innovation, the research part. That's what you mentioned.
Yeah.
We will continue because we are the official part of Hydrogen Europe, where we work together with the European Commission, is exactly that Horizon Europe part.
Yeah.
So research, much more innovation. We have seen that concentrating on research alone is at the moment not doing the job. We still have implementation tasks. We need to implement. We have a lot of quite mature technologies. Overcoming chicken and egg, I already mentioned this, is more important. That's why we address this by taking the research innovation money to create so-called valleys. What does that mean? In different regions of Europe, not even member states, but regions, ammonia valleys or mobility valleys or steel valleys are developed to bring the producers and the users of hydrogen in a valley together. And in the end, the hope is that all these valleys grow together. But this valley idea could also be an interesting thing to do here in India. And the most important thing is that we don't abuse innovation money, because to create a new corporation is very, very innovative. But we want to continue the Horizon program in this aspect. But of course, there will be enough money also to concentrate on new elements. Safety has been mentioned. Everything that we scale up now brings a lot of new challenges. And these new challenges need to be covered by research, innovation, and that's what we do. Basically, we concentrate on the scale and the technological challenges in that respect.
Hi, last question from my side.
One,
I have
one last, yeah.
I'm here, left side to you. Yeah, hi, yeah. This is Malli. I'm all over from world. I don't represent India. So, we're all indirectly working together. So most of the Indian electrolyzer, whoever is actually investing, they're actually getting electrolyzer technology from European Union, from United States, from Australia. So indirectly, we're all working together. So why do you actually say that European Union requires still help from the India in terms of, if you actually manufacture or synthesize green ammonia, we're going to import it, but we are already working together, right?
Because the European production capacity will not be enough for the big hydrogen and derivative markets we have in Europe. And we need to see also electrolyzer capacity, electrolyzer factories here in India. Because the change and the demand globally is so big that you will contribute here in India much faster, much easier to this. I see Sunita here representing the US. The US has quite some bureaucratic burden, but not as much as we have. So it's super difficult to build something up in Europe. It's easier here. And as we need to ramp up the hydrogen globally, as I showed in the very beginning, we walk together, but that means that we also need to invest into electrolyzer capacity or cracker capacity here in India, but also in other countries. But India is very well known for its engineers, for its ability to adapt fast, for a very good steel industry. Electrolyzers are steel. You have it here. And this steel will most probably then also be CBAM. That's another big European thing, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. CBAM ready, so you won't have extra taxes, because if you produce them with green steel here, you can import them easily to Europe. And we will need Indian electrolyzers too. This is walking together. This is not one against each other, and I like this very much, maybe to also end, because we have an announcement that shows that we walk together right now. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Jorgo, for a very, very interesting and frank discussion. And it's time for us to conclude this session.
Thank you. And as we close the session, I would like to invite Mr. Ajay Yadav, the Joint Secretary.